So imagine someone hurls an insult at you, right? You're in a crowded room.
Oh, the worst feeling.
Yeah, exactly. It's terrible. Your heart immediately starts racing, your face gets all flush, and your ego is it's absolutely screaming at you to fire back with like a devastating comeback.
Right, you want to defend yourself.
Exactly. But what if the absolute most powerful, disarming thing you could do in that exact split second is, well, simply blink, breathe, and just say nothing at all?
Which is so hard to do.
It really is. But welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are exploring a concept that flies in the face of, everything modern society tells us about power, because we live in a world that insists you have to be loud to matter.
Yeah, you have to constantly broadcast yourself.
Right, you have to take up space, build a brand, project your voice, and constantly broadcast exactly who you are just to prove you exist, basically.
Mm-hmm.
We're unpacking a really fascinating excerpt from a text called The Sovereign Art of Silence.
Great.
It really is. And our mission today is to explore this text's radical central premise, which is that doing absolutely nothing and saying absolutely nothing might actually be the ultimate power move in a noisy world.
It is a complete inversion of how most of us operate day to day. Remember, we treat silence as a void, right?
Yeah, like an awkward gap.
Exactly, like an awkward gap that we are, for some reason, urgently responsible for filling. The prevailing assumption is that if you aren't speaking, you are either, irrelevant, or you simply have nothing of value to add.
Totally.
But the ideas we're looking at today deconstruct that entirely, framing silence not as an absence, but as a really heavily weighted presence.
Okay, let's unpack this because I am genuinely so excited about how counterintuitive this feels. For most of us, there is this desperate, almost biological drive to constantly speak up just to feel secure in our social standing.
Oh, absolutely.
And as I was going through the source material, this analogy kept popping into my head. Think about our usual social interactions, especially the stressful ones, like a massive, endless game of tug of war.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like we are all gripping this rough, heavy rope, pulling with everything we have to drag the other side toward our point of view. We pull to get noticed, we pull to be understood, we pull to win the argument.
You just get exhausted.
Exactly. We are just exhausting ourselves, burning our hands in the process. What we are really exploring today is the idea that you don't win by pulling harder. You win by simply dropping the rope entirely.
Dropping the rope is exactly what we're talking about. What's fascinating here is that this isn't just about the mere physical act of keeping your mouth shut.
Right, it's deeper than that.
Much deeper. It is a fundamental rewiring of human power dynamics and, emotional mechanics. We're going to examine exactly how we willingly forfeit our own authority every single day without realizing it, and more importantly, how we can stop handing that power over.
And I think the best way to understand that shift is to look at a highly specific, visceral scenario from the text. So imagine walking into a room, a party, a networking event, maybe a family gathering. You walk in, the door closes behind you, and nothing. Not a single person looks up. Nobody greets you. The conversations just keep humming along. You are basically entirely invisible.
Oh man, it's an image that immediately makes your stomach drop. You could practically feel the temperature in the room plummet just visualizing it,
Exactly. Now, think about your automatic reaction to that invisibility. Let's call this the past reaction, the way most of us have operated for years. That moment of being ignored actively hurts.
It really does.
And in response to that hurt, we go into overdrive, we try harder, we, project our voices a little louder, we smile a bit too widely.
Over-smiling.
Right. We start hovering near conversations, waiting for the perfect millisecond to jump in and explain ourselves. We are essentially performing, desperately trying to prove our worth to a room full of people who just haven't given us a second thought.
And we really need to dig into why that hurts so much, because it's not just a bruised ego here.
What do you mean?
Well, there is a deep evolutionary psychology at play. Humans evolved in tight-knit tribes where your survival depended entirely on your social standing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if the tribe ignored you, it basically meant you were being left behind. And being left behind meant starvation. Modern neuroscience actually shows that social rejection triggers the exact same pain receptors in the anterior cingulate cortex of your brain as a physical injury.
Wait, really? Like actual physical pain?
Yes. So when you walk into that room and you are met with indifference, your brain registers it as a literal threat to your survival. Panic sets in. So you scramble to perform and reintegrate.
That makes total sense. We're basically trying to save our own lives by talking louder. But here is the alternative, what we can call the present reaction.
Okay.
You walk into that exact same room today, you are still ignored, but this time, instead of scrambling, you just sit down. You observe, you take a slow breath, you say nothing.
A completely different vibe.
Yeah, and strangely, for the first time in your life, you feel incredibly powerful. The core realization is that real power doesn't begin when people finally notice you. It begins the exact moment you no longer need them to notice.
That is the pivotal shift. You are moving from a state of deficit where you, need the room to validate your existence to a state of complete internal sufficiency.
But let me push back on this for a second, on behalf of anyone listening who might feel a bit defensive about this idea.
Sure, go ahead.
Because when I first thought about just sitting down and breathing while everyone ignores me, my instinct was, wait, is this just giving up?
I see what you mean.
Yeah, it sounds a little like passive resignation, like, fine, I couldn't get their attention, so I'm just gonna sit in the corner and pout.
Oh.
Is this new reaction of sitting and breathing just a form of giving up, or is it a conscious, active reclamation of your own space?
That is a critical distinction to make, and it really comes down to intention.
What?
Giving up is a reaction to defeat. It implies you desperately wanted the room's attention, you failed to secure it, and now you're retreating.
Right.
The silence we are talking about is an active, conscious choice. You aren't hiding in the corner. You are fully occupying your space. Observation is an incredibly active state of mind. Breathing and grounding yourself takes focus.
It's intentional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By choosing not to perform, you are actively bringing your own weather to the room, rather than letting the room dictate your climate. In psychology, it's the shift from an external locus of control, believing your environment dictates your worth, to an internal locus of control. You are holding court in silence.
Bringing your own weather to the room. I love that. But of course, holding court in silence is risky, isn't it?
How
Because the moment we stop performing, we invite a vacuum, and our natural instinct is to panic and fill that void, which perfectly explains why we so often fall back into our old habits. We have to look at the external tracks we fall into when we do try to force people's attention, and what that actually costs us.
so? The cost is immense. Because when we break that composure to seek validation, we fundamentally alter the balance of power.
Right. Think about these three dynamics. When you constantly explain yourself, you give people access to your emotions.
Yes.
When you constantly defend yourself, you place your peace in someone else's hands. And when you constantly seek approval, your confidence no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the crowd.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a literal mechanical transfer of authority.
Mechanical.
Yeah. We usually think of explaining ourselves or defending our actions as ways of asserting dominance, and we think, if I can just make them understand my impeccable logic, I will win the interaction.
Oh, I do that all the time.
We all do. But the underlying mechanics prove the exact opposite. When you desperately defend yourself, you are implicitly setting up a courtroom in your mind, and you are appointing the other person as the judge.
Wow.
You are handing them the gavel. If they accept your explanation, you feel safe. If they reject it, you feel crushed. Your emotional peace is now entirely dependent on their ruling. You have made yourself completely vulnerable to the whims of an audience.
Okay, logically, I hear you, but I have to challenge this, especially when we think about how we navigate the real world, like in a corporate environment or a relationship.
Fair enough.
Society tells us that explaining our decisions is simply being a good, transparent communicator. We are constantly told that over-communication is better than under-communication. So, where is the line between healthy explanation and giving away your emotional peace to the crowd?
The line is drawn entirely by your motivation and your emotional attachment to the response. Healthy communication is the objective sharing of data necessary for collaboration.
Okay, so just facts.
Right. You state your reasoning, you offer the context, and then you detach from how the other person emotionally processes it. The data stands on its own. Over-explaining, however, is driven by an emotional umbilical cord.
A need for validation.
Exactly. It's driven by the desperate need for the other person to say, you are right, you are good, I approve of you. If you find yourself repeating the same point 3 different ways, if your voice goes up half an octave, if you feel a tightening in your chest when someone doesn't immediately validate your logic, you have crossed the line. That is when your confidence belongs to the crowd.
It's the difference between saying, here is the blueprint and why we chose it, versus, please tell me I'm smart for choosing this blueprint.
Exactly. One shares information while retaining authority. The other begs for permission to feel secure.
So, if over-explaining constantly hands over our power, let's pivot and examine the alternative. How do the people who actually retain their power operate out in the real world? Because there is a stark contrast we have to recognize here from the text.
What's the contrast?
The world rewards those who react, but history remembers those who remain composed.
Yeah, it is a profound distinction. The world rewards those who react because our modern ecosystem thrives on friction.
Oh, totally. Social media is built on it.
Right. The immediate hot take, the outraged tweet, defensive clapback, it generates instant, short-term attention. But lasting authority, true legacy, is almost entirely owned by the composed.
So, what does this all mean? As I was digesting this, I started thinking about it in terms of economics, actually.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, think about currency. If a central bank just prints an endless, limitless amount of money, you get inflation. The currency loses its purchasing power. A $100 bill becomes worth the paper it's printed on.
Right, basic supply and demand.
Exactly. And the exact same economic principle applies to speaking. If your voice is constantly available, if you are always offering your unprompted opinion, constantly reacting to every tiny stimulus, your voice suffers from inflation. It becomes cheap.
That makes a lot of sense.
But silence creates scarcity. By holding your tongue, you are restricting the supply of your words. So when you finally do choose to weigh in, that scarcity instantly drives up the value of what you are saying. People lean in because they know you don't just spend your words frivolously.
That supply side analogy works perfectly. But we also have to look at the demand side of the economics.
Okay, tell me more.
When you are constantly talking, you aren't just inflating the value of your words, you are exhausting the listener's attention span. You are bankrupting their ability to care.
Wow, yes.
This raises an important question. Why are humans so wired to fill the void of silence if it creates so much value to just stay quiet?
Because the void feels dangerous. It feels like if we don't fill the dead air, we lose our relevance.
Exactly. It's that primal fear creeping back in. But if you watch people who naturally command respect, you'll notice their silence isn't a dead zone. It isn't empty.
What are they doing then?
While everyone else is rushing to fill the void, the composed person is actively gathering data. When you are talking, you are only repeating what you already know. You are learning nothing.
That's a great point.
When you are silent, you are mapping the room. You are identifying the insecurities of the people speaking, you are finding the flaws in their logic, and you are understanding their true motivations.
You are basically getting a full aerial map of the battlefield while everyone else is just running around blindfolded swinging a sword.
Precisely. You have a massive asymmetry of information. So, when that composed person finally spends their scarce, highly valued words, they aren't just making noise.
They actually have something to say.
Right. They're delivering a highly targeted, surgically precise insight based on all the data they just quietly absorb. They let everyone else exhaust themselves in the tug of war, and then they calmly walk over and untie the knot.
Which is exactly why their words land with so much weight. Okay, so if remaining composed creates incredible economic value for our words and gives us this massive informational advantage, why is it so incredibly difficult to actually execute in the moment?
It's so hard.
We have to talk about the psychological hurdles of silence because applying this takes real work.
It does. And the primary hurdle is a massive cultural misunderstanding of what silence actually represents.
Yeah, we have this ingrained belief that silence equates to weakness. We think that if a colleague criticizes us in a meeting or someone takes a shot at us online and we say nothing, it means we are a pushover.
We think it means we concede the point.
Exactly. But the reality is the exact opposite. Silence requires exponentially more strength than speaking. Anyone can shout. Anyone can complain. Anyone can fire off a defensive email.
Because a reaction requires zero effort. It is a biological reflex.
Like a literal reflex.
Yeah, think about when a doctor taps your knee with a little rubber hammer and your leg kicks forward.
Yeah.
You didn't consciously strategize that kick. Your nervous system just bypassed your brain and reacted.
Right.
When someone provokes you and you instantly snap back, you are just a knee jerking. You are entirely predictable and entirely manageable.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We walk around thinking that reacting loudly, dominating the conversation, having the last word, makes us look like strong alpha figures.
Like that doesn't.
No. The ultimate irony is that reacting instantly proves we are easily controlled by external demands. As someone can say a handful of words and instantly hijack your nervous system, force your heart rate up, and make you scramble to defend yourself, You aren't a strong, independent force. You are a puppet on a string, and they are holding the wooden handle.
That is the essence of emotional mastery. Remaining calm while the world actively demands a reaction from you. That is why it is one of the rarest forms of power.
I was thinking about it like this. Instead of the usual cliche about being a dam holding back a flood, think of it more like a massive ship's anchor in a storm.
Okay, I like that visual.
The waves are crashing, the wind is howling, and all the smaller boats are getting tossed around, making people incredibly seasick. But the anchor doesn't fight the waves. It doesn't shout at the wind.
It just holds.
It just sinks deep into the bedrock and holds its position. The chaos happens all around it, but the anchor remains entirely unmoved. Choosing silence is dropping that anchor. It is the ultimate act of rebellion against a world that demands you get tossed around in the storm.
And setting that anchor is entirely an internal battle. Because true emotional mastery is an internal fortress.
What do you mean by internal fortress?
Well, when you are provoked, your ego is going to scream at you to defend your honor. You will feel the adrenaline dump into your bloodstream. You aren't just ignoring the world. You are successfully managing your own internal urge to jump into the fray.
That takes so much discipline.
It does.
Yeah.
True emotional mastery is feeling all of that internal chaos, acknowledging it, and consciously deciding, no, I am not going to let this external trigger dictate my internal state.
You're building a fortress.
Exactly. And when you encounter someone who operates from that internal fortress, it is magnetic. You can't manipulate them. You can't bait them into a pointless debate. They're completely sovereign over their own emotional state.
So let's bring all of this together for you. We started by walking into that invisible room and realizing that true power doesn't mean scrambling for attention. It begins the moment you become internally sufficient enough not to need it.
A massive shift.
Huge! Then we explored the subtle trap of over-explaining and how desperately defending yourself literally hands the gavel over to a crowd of strangers, letting them judge your worth.
Giving away your piece.
Right. We looked at the economics of speech, how constant reaction inflates and cheapens your voice, while silence creates scarcity and commands respect. And finally, we reframed composure. It is never weakness. It is the anchor in the storm, the ultimate flex of emotional mastery in a world demanding you act like a puppet.
As we wrap up this exploration, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Taking these mechanics and applying them directly to your own life.
Yeah, please do.
Next time, maybe tomorrow or even later today, you are going to encounter friction. Someone will disagree with you or misunderstand you, or maybe just ignore you.
It's gonna happen.
It always does. When you feel that familiar, desperate, bubbling urge in your chest to jump into a heated argument or to immediately explain yourself to a room that isn't really listening, pause. Ask yourself, what would happen if you just took a breath, sat back, and let the silence do the heavy lifting? What power are you leaving on the table by choosing to speak?
It really makes you rethink every time you ever reach out, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you take a little bit of this silence with you today. Until next time.